Welcome. The quarter four meeting of the Madison Tableau user group is Mastering Tooltips and Future Data Roles. We are really excited to host you. We just wanted to remind you that we do have a LinkedIn group for the Madison Tableau user group. If you guys haven't already signed up, we'd love to have you participate. We share announcements, special articles, polls, etc., about the group's activities in that LinkedIn site. Your Madison TUG leadership team includes myself and Robert Salas, your hosts for today's meeting, in addition to Jen Shepard and Jeff Christman. Today's agenda, we're going to be doing welcome and announcements here for the next couple of minutes, and then Jen is actually following up on her Tableau tip on tooltips from our quarter three meeting and is going to be expanding on how to create sophisticated tooltips. She's got an incredible, engaging presentation and some great tips to make sure that you all are maximizing tooltips to their best capabilities. From noon to 12:40, we're really excited to host a panel on roles and guiding your career in data. We've been discussing how to make content more relevant and engaging for you all, our Madison TUG members, and we're looking to kind of dig in to some of the questions around how you end up using data or data visualization and analytics in your career, things to look for in terms of prepping for new positions or improving your position within your existing company. And we've got 5 amazing panelists set up from a variety of different sectors to talk us through that. We will be asking for audience questions and answers during that panel. So just giving you a heads up, we'd love to see your all's engagement in chat today. If you have questions for any of our panelists or our presenters today, please make sure to put those in the Q&A section so that we can get those answered and asked. Asked and answered, I believe, is the proper direction for that. I did that backwards. That's fun. Anyway, we're really excited to have you today. So after our panel discussion, we'll have some questions that we ask our panel. You all will ask your questions. We're going to end today with a Tableau tip over enclosed dot plots. Robert's going to walk us through some of those non-unique plot types that you may not use on a day-to-day basis, but can be really valuable with your data. And then last but not least, we're planning to do, we'll wrap everything up and do a swag giveaway. We've got a couple of gift cards for folks to win today, so make sure that you're participating and to be entered into those, entered into those swag giveaways. For those that are in Madison, if you're interested, tonight at 5:30, we are also doing our annual holiday year-end party at Delta Beer Lab. We would love to have you there. We've got fun crafts, events, games, and we're going to be going over the 12 gifts of Tableau. So there'll be a little learning component as well. We really hope that we get to see you all, or at least all of our Madison attendees, at the event later this evening. So with that, if I don't think I missed anything, leadership team, jump in. Jen, I see you came off on your camera. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Beautiful. Yeah. All right. So Jen's going to kick it off today with creating sophisticated tooltips. And I'm excited to hand it over to her. So Jen, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Hey, everybody. I'm not going to do a lengthy intro because I have been one of the leaders of this Tableau user group for 8 years. So probably most of you know me. If not, please come to another event and let's get to know each other better. So yeah, as Olivia said, I am continuing on my presentation that I did in September for our Q3 event. There were things that we didn't get to that I wanted to cover, and it seemed like you all were having a good time with this. The audience voted to continue. So this is a part 2. So I'm not going to recap everything that I did in the previous session. I will say that it was recorded. So if you missed it or just want a refresher, you can go out to YouTube and Google Madison Tableau user group and look for the September 2025, and you'll see the recording. My portion of the tooltip presentation was towards the end. What I covered in that was some general advice for me as somebody who's been building dashboards basically daily for 8 or so years. I had a few tips and tricks that maybe some of you are not familiar with. And then I did a bunch of examples. I showed some examples from the community, other people's work. I showed a few different ways of upping your tooltip game using emojis, especially dynamic text. And we also talked a bit about viz and tooltip, and in particular, how to make it work for you in the way that you want to. And that's where I'm going to pick up from where I left off last time. So today, what I'm going to cover is more about those viz and tooltips. I didn't get to divider lines last time, so we'll talk about how to add a divider line in your tooltip to keep things tidy. We'll do a little bit about the formatting, so some of the things that you see the arrows pointing to here on the screenshot, and then some of the functions that maybe you just kind of overlook, or maybe you don't really know how to get the full benefit from those. So I'll be talking about those as well. And then I'll wrap up with just a couple of parting thoughts to end this tooltip double segment. So let's go to Tableau. And I'm going to use the workbook that I used last time. So if you were here in September, this should look familiar to you. And as I said, I want to pick up where I left off with those viz and tooltips. So last time we talked about with this area chart, how you could adjust the viz and tooltip. Oh, hang on. Tableau's got to load it again. How you could adjust the viz and tooltip code to get it to do what you want. So we talked about how by default, it's going to pass through any of the fields that your source worksheet has in common with your target sheet, which may be what you want it to do, but sometimes it isn't. Is this working yet? Oops, it worked too well. Accidentally hit exclude. Okay, here we go. But sometimes that isn't what you want. And so we talked about how you could customize that to get it to show the pieces that you did. Well, let's talk about a different scenario. What if you have a viz that you want to show in the tooltip as context to the viz that your user is looking at, and you don't want Tableau to filter anything at all? So I made a copy of this worksheet for our example here, and I also built out this just pretty basic map. This is just sales in general across all of the territories and regions and states that we have in the data set, and it's just in grayscale. So just a basic map. And let's say, for the sake of this demo, that we wanted to show this entire map in our tooltip. So if I go into this worksheet and into the tooltip, and I insert that sheet, my second monitor is a little bit in the way here, pardon me, and I enter that sales map, and if I leave it by default, you can probably guess what Tableau is going to do. It is slow to process, for one. Come on. There we go. Wait a minute, that is not my whole map. It is passing through the dimensions that it has in common. So you can see very clearly that we're only looking at one region at a time because only that part of my map is there. And if we started comparing data values, you would see that those would be changing as well. That it's factoring in the year, which is in my area chart, and it's factoring in the category, which is in my area chart. But I don't want that. I want the whole map. So the way you fix that is in the code for your viz and tooltip, this part where it's filtering all fields, and we adjusted this last time to specify specific dimensions. What we're going to do this time is take out this whole part in between the quotes and leave just the quotes there. And then when I go to use my tooltip, sorry, this is so laggy. There we go. I get the whole map. Fantastic. So that's a little trick that maybe you didn't know of how to make those viz and tooltips work for you a little bit better. And I know that's a little cramped. If I were really doing this, I would make that a little bigger and so on. But the point I wanted to show you was that no filtering. Okay, another thing I wanted to talk about in terms of viz and tooltips is what if you want to put in more than one? Now, caveat that as I mentioned last time, I don't think it's a good idea to put too much good information hidden away in the tooltip. I don't think you're doing a good service to your users. But for the sake of this training, let's assume that you do want to have more than one sheet in here. So in this one, you can see I have these, oh gosh, sorry, there's a lag. And so when I try to click on something, it's selecting when I don't want it to. So right now I have these viz and tooltips one above the other, and that's great. I could also, maybe I want them side by side. So if I just put them next to each other like this, you might think, okay, those should be side by side. And sometimes, depending on your vizzes, they are. But look what happened. I said I wanted them side by side, but they're one on top of the other. So one trick for dealing with that is instead of just putting them side by side with a space in between, use the tab key. So I just tabbed in between those two. And now when I hover over here, it forced them to go side by side. Pretty cool. And you're not limited to just two. So another tip that I gave you last time is that if you try to insert from the insert menu a sheet you've already used as a viz and tooltip, it won't let you. But if you copy the code and paste it, you can have multiple tooltips. So now we're going to have basically a 2x2, two next to each other and two above. Obviously, this looks terrible. I would not do this with this type of chart, but just showing you how that could work. So the tab key can be really useful there to getting things to align the way that you want. You could also try making your sheet a little narrower. So the other thing we talked about last time is how you can edit these dimensions. So we've got the width. I could have made those sheets a little narrower, and then it probably would have put them side by side, even without the tab. But then sometimes that makes your viz look a little scrunched. I maybe already had it the exact width that I want. So that's where that tab can come in really handy. Okay, next let's talk about divider lines. I promised I would get to that. So there's several ways of doing this. I'm going to go over the two that I think are probably the most common. So one, we'll go back to this sheet. One of them is just to put a character, whatever character you like, directly in the tooltip box. So maybe you just want to do a bunch of hyphens, right? That works. And then you can edit this to be a bigger font or a different color, or whatever you like. That works, especially if you want something a little custom here. Maybe you don't want just a little line. Maybe you want something a little fancier, like I'm using alt code 240. Another tip I gave last time on how you can use basically any text field. So maybe I want these triple lines or something, and you can just paste them out. Again, I can make them whatever color. You could do something like a diamond, anything. That's the nice thing about doing it directly in the tooltip. The tricky part, though, is that it's hard to know when to stop. How many of those characters do I need to go the width of my tooltip? Trial and error, basically. It's hard to know exactly where that is. So the other way of doing this is another couple of steps, but it does give you a tooltip divider line in the way that you want it. So all you need is a new worksheet, and you don't actually have to bring any fields at all onto this worksheet. What we're interested in is going up to formatting the borders, and we want to edit our row divider to be the way we want our tooltip divider to look like. So maybe I'll make it kind of a chunky line. Let's make that a little darker. That looks pretty good to me. And then you want to make sure you set this to entire view. And then we will bring it into our tooltip. So just like any other viz and tooltip, I'm just going to insert, oops, I should have called it something useful like divider, but that's sheet 19. So I bring it in, and then what I want to do is make sure I set the width to something that makes sense depending on maybe the whatever I have below it. So in this case, I've got this one sheet that's 300, so I would want my tooltip divider to be the same width. If I had those two viz and tooltips side by side, like I showed you just a moment ago, and they were each 300, I'd make this 600. So you can also do a little trial and error with that, but it is a little easier when you can set it to a specific number. But the other trick to this is the height. It has to be at least 9. I don't know why. That's been a quirk in Tableau for years. If you don't set it to at least 9, you'll get an error and it'll say the view won't fit. But if you set it to 9 or larger, then what you get is a very nice divider line. And again, you can customize what that line looks like with the color, the thickness, even a little bit of dottedness. So pretty easy way to do a divider. And you can use that over and over with that copy the code trick and just paste it wherever you need it. So you could have more than one divider in the same tooltip. You could use it across all of your tooltips and only build the divider sheet once. Pretty handy. All right, next thing I want to talk about is some of the formatting pieces. Especially if you're a beginner Tableau user, you may not really have explored what these look like. So in the tooltip interface, I'm going to clear some of the stuff out that we don't want anymore either. Let's just get down to one sheet, something that looks more reasonable. So there's all kinds of stuff going on in here. You've probably used the font and some of these formatting pieces, but maybe you've never really explored some of these. So I just wanted to tell you what they do, and then you can have fun experimenting with them. If I click this X, what it's going to do is wipe out any custom formatting I've put in here. So in this particular case, you see how some things are bolded. If I had made something italics or made something smaller, it would clear all of that. And there it goes. We'll undo that. Oh, I got to close out first. We'll undo that. So that's what that one does. And then the other one is if I were to click this reset button, what that would do is reset the tooltip to its default state of how Tableau would have built it before I came in here and turned this into a sentence, which I did in our last session. So if I hit reset, it just goes back to that really basic name of the field value. So I'm not sure that you'll get a ton of use out of those. I don't often use them, but when I have needed to reset something, it is really handy. Whoops, what I meant to do is undo. Undo, undo. Clearly one of the best things about Tableau ever is the infinite undo. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to tell you about in terms of these formatting are the buttons at the bottom. So I think a lot of people, when they're first learning Tableau, especially if they're trained by somebody else, are taught to uncheck or exclude these features down here. And there are good reasons to do that. But sometimes these are actually really valuable things to give your users. Let's look at these one at a time. So the include command buttons, what that's going to give your users the ability to really dig into the data a little bit more. So when I'm hovering over this tooltip, you see the sentence, you see the graph, and then above it, there are some options. I can pick out a data point and get rid of it. Maybe you're looking at a scatter plot or something with a trend line, and there's an outlier that's just killing your trend. Your user can actually temporarily exclude that data point by using those command options, which is really handy. That would be exclude. Or they can put things together in a group and see how sales are looking for these 3 states combined or something like that. In more recent versions of Tableau, we've got the data guide that tells them a little bit more about the underlying data. They can make a set, etc. So those can be really handy for your users. Where I think it is especially handy is if you've given them a table. So if you haven't added a total column to the table by itself, if you enable the command buttons, like I have in this tooltip, what that lets your user do is pick a couple of rows in the table, and when I release my mouse, it gives me the sum. If I hadn't left that command button checked, that wouldn't have happened. So this is the piece that I really use this option, this feature for, is when I have a table giving my users the ability to make their own sums depending on which rows they most want to look at. Very helpful. Now, as I said, there are good reasons why you might not want to do that. Maybe your measure is a rate or a percent, and summing the percents makes no sense whatsoever. Might be more trouble than it's worth, so that they don't get confused by summing up something that shouldn't be summed. Or maybe you really don't want them to be able to make groups and sets or whatever. You want them to look at it exactly as you built it. Then yeah, sure, it's fine to turn those off. But I want to make sure that you know what they can do for you so that you can make an informed decision about whether it belongs or not. And then the bottom one is one that I think people really sleep on. I don't think a lot of people use this feature. And again, sometimes it doesn't make sense to do it. Can't remember if I left it on or off. All right, it's still on. So allow selection by category is problematic for users in the sense that they can't see at a glance that anything is different. Whether I check it or uncheck it, the tooltip looks exactly the same if you just look at it. But if you're able to train your user or put a help or info or annotate it, or maybe it's just your company practice and people start knowing that they can do this, it can be really powerful to have that ability. Because when I click into the tooltip and move over these dimensions, you might notice that they underline, and there's the little hand, the selector, that tells me I can do something with them. And what this is going to do when I click on any of these is highlight all the data points in this graph that also share that dimension. So in this case, region is not very helpful. The viz is already pretty well divided by region. Category, a little bit helpful, and kind of cool to see where all of those are. Color was already doing that for us. But where I think it really shines is in this case, subcategory. This makes it so much easier for your user to see this pattern of what, in this case, tables is doing across the years, across the regions, without having to do anything else. They just clicked on that dimension. So some vizzes in particular work really well for this, and this is one of them. And yes, I could have achieved the same effect using a highlight tool, but what I don't like about that is then Tableau wants to highlight my entire dashboard anywhere it sees that dimension. And so you end up with things that get grayed out on my other vizzes, and it's kind of hideous. Just do that really quickly. So unhighlight that real quick. So yeah, I just put a highlighter on this viz, and let's go highlight envelopes. So you can see that it's doing the same thing on my dot plot, which is good, but look what it's doing to the rest of my dashboard. That's so frustrating. I don't want the rest of my dashboard to gray out. So that's why doing it from the tooltip can be really helpful. And again, some vizzes it makes more sense to do that than others, but where it makes sense to do it, it really adds a lot of value. All right, just checking how I'm doing on time. Doing pretty good. I am not monitoring for questions, so if Olivia or Robert, if you see any burning questions that you think I should address live, please speak up. Otherwise, I will definitely check out the Q&A afterward and address questions.
There is a question in chat, Jen, whenever you want it.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so the question comes from Devin. It can be difficult to provide just-in-time documentation answering, wait, what does this mean? How was this calculated in Tableau? There are many options, a separate text dashboard, info buttons near the viz that are sheets offering a tooltip on hover, but it often finds its way into the viz tooltips. What do you recommend? How do you address that?
Yeah, that is a great question. Part of it is just how many dashboards do you build for the same audience? Because then you can get into a pattern where they know where to look for that type of info. A lot of the places I've worked, a lot of the customers I've had, they get used to looking in the upper right corner, for example, for an info icon that has all the definitions. Another thing that works really well, I find, is to have an info icon next to the viz where I'm putting a definition, because then they don't need to interact with it when they're trying to interact with the viz, but it's there if they want to just remind themselves what that definition is, or what does this phrase mean, or whatever I might be explaining there. But it's not repeating itself every time I'm trying to look at a data point. Imagine how annoying it would be for every one of these data points I hover over to get a sentence or something that's the same all the time. So I would never put that in the viz tooltip, but I might definitely put it right next to the viz it's describing if it's super critical that they see it, or if my users don't have a habit of looking somewhere else, or if it's maybe the first time I built something for them. So yes, I agree. There are lots of places you could put it. That's what I tend to do. Separate dashboards, I think that can be useful if you've got a lot of text that people need to see, if you need to describe how the data were prepared, maybe you have multiple data sources. If it starts getting into paragraph territory or half a page territory, yeah, I might put that on a separate dashboard or a show hide container or something. But if it's just a sentence or two to explain something, I tend to put it on the dashboard that they're looking at, and especially close to where they're interacting with the part of the dashboard that pertains to. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Okay, so I wanted to show you a couple other examples. So I'm going to go back to my slide deck here. So last time I showed you several examples from the community. So I just want to show you two this time. So this is one where the dashboard itself is pretty deliberately simplistic. So there's not a lot of labels on things. You see these spark lines to get a general sense of the trend. You've got these bar charts that are only really labeled for the percent change, which I think is great to give somebody a really high level view. But then that's a great tip that you probably were going to need your tooltip to give people the detail. And so in this case, what they've chosen to do is provide the specific values that make up both what's shown in the bar and what it's comparing against in the percent change. Pretty standard stuff there. You see a divider line there, which I just showed you. But the one piece I really wanted to call your attention to on this one is, do you notice those circles in front of the two metrics? So in this case, a color legend isn't particularly necessary for this chart because there's really only one color. But you can imagine how that technique could be really useful in something like the area chart tooltip, where you can have the legend be the color of the text. I see people do that a lot. Or it can be a symbol like this. My guess is this is just the Alt-7 code. It makes a nice little circle, and then they colored it accordingly to kind of match the color theme of the dashboard. Another great way of using text objects and using color and bringing it all home and bringing it all together in the tooltip. So I wanted to show you that example. And then my last example is this amazing viz from Sam Parsons. Sam Parsons, I will fangirl a little bit here. He's one of my favorite designers of all time. Got to meet him at Tableau conference. It was amazing. In Tableau conference 23, he did a presentation where he built this dashboard. And so you see here on the left a scatter plot. You see this really cool multi-level viz on the right. And you're probably thinking, Jen, this is a presentation on tooltips. Where's the tooltip? That entire piece on the right is the tooltip. So he did some amazing Tableau wizardry and hacked map layers, which is a resolution I have to get better at that in 2026. I don't know how he did this, but it's one worksheet, map layers, got all these cool things on there, and that's a viz and tooltip. Now, you've heard me say a couple of times that I don't think a lot of good information should be hidden away in the tooltip. I personally would have made this a show hide instead of a hover on viz and tooltip, but I just wanted to show you the incredible capabilities of what a tooltip can be. I was blown away by this. You've got links at the bottom, you've got reference lines, this background. That's the part that's maybe the coolest to me. I was just very, very impressed. And then finally, my parting thoughts, kind of condensing a lot of what I've covered over the last two sessions together. So one, I think it's really important to make sure if you are working with your tooltip that it's adding value. I said last time that I don't do redundant tooltips. I never have a tooltip that's showing exactly the same thing as what's in the viz. I need to add something more to it to make it have value. And sometimes value might mean you've explained the same pieces of information, but you did it in a sentence, which is easier for some people to read, especially if they're not particularly familiar with graphs. Or value might be echoing the color legend so that it reinforces what data point they're looking at. So that I think that's an important part of this, is make sure your tooltip is doing something for your audience. Along with that is being really intentional about what you put in the tooltip and what you don't, and the way you arrange things in your tooltip and the way you format it. One formatting thing I didn't get to is that little ruler across the top. If we have a minute here, I can pop back in there. I just realized I didn't cover that at all. You can use it like a tab stop, and you can very precisely line up your content in your tooltip. Can make it a lot easier to read. And then the last one is using empathy. Now, we tend to think of the word empathy just in terms of feelings, but if you look it up like I did, just to confirm I was right, empathy does refer to putting yourself in other people's thoughts as well, and thinking about how they're going to experience something. And that fits very well into what we do as dashboard designers, that when we're building something for somebody else, what will it be like for your audience to come across this viz? What other context can you put in the tooltip that will make them understand it more easily? Where can you put a definition so that they can go find it when they need it, but it's not always in their face when they don't want to see it? So I think these three things together are really how you have exceptional tooltips. And hopefully some of the examples I've shown you and some of the ways I've shown you of between the formatting and the sophisticated viz and tooltips have given you some thoughts and some ideas about how you can really up your tooltip game, because they are important and really helpful. All right. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Olivia.
Jen, we did have one more question come through.
Oh, sure.
If you're up for it.
I am
Sarah,
up for it.
Perfect. Sarah's asking, do you have any thoughts on the sentence style tooltips? For example, in year, there were X sales for furniture.
Yes, I use those sometimes, particularly if I've got an audience who I think may not be able to do that themselves as easily. So if I'm building for a general audience, for example, and I have no idea what the data literacy is of the people who will be encountering this dashboard, then I think spelling it out in sentence format makes it more familiar to people. And also, even if they did get it right, if they looked at the chart and that's what they came up with too, and the tooltip confirms that for them, that's a good feeling for somebody, like, oh yeah, I understood that. So that's when I tend to use it, is if the audience is either an audience I don't know, or I think there might be a concern there that they might not understand it. I probably wouldn't use the sentence format if I know the audience knows these data cold. They're very analytical. They absolutely know what the sales is. So I do use it judiciously, but I do use it because some audiences, I think, really appreciate being able to see it explained in that way.
I think that's a great answer. And I have to say too, I don't think of empathy a lot when I'm building. So I love that you included that. That's a poignant point I'm going to take home too when I'm building. Jen, that was a fantastic presentation. We don't have any more questions for you, but thank you so much for all of those enlightening thoughts. I think it's really going to help folks. All right, team, it is time to move on to our panel discussion. I'm very excited about this session. I am going to share my screen just to do a brief little intro on kind of what we're doing today, and so that you can officially see our panel participants as we get started here. So our panel discussion today has wonderful volunteers that have participated from a variety of different sectors. We've got Paul, president and founder of Naviq. We have Jim, founder of Rising Tides Analytics. Joel is joining us from Databricks as a delivery solution architect. Kristen Nissen is a BI supervisor, business intelligence supervisor here at the state of Wisconsin in the Department of Corrections. And Robert Salas, one of our LT members, also happens to be an assistant professor and consultant at Carroll University and Palindromic Data Solutions. So we have a couple of questions that we're going to start the panel off on today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, let them turn on their cameras, and then there will be a break for audience questions about partway through this panel. So please make sure as we go along, if you've got any burning questions on roles, data roles in data viz, data analytics, data professions in general, and how you can guide your career, that you're putting those in the Q&A so we can make sure they get answered by our panelists. So with that, I'd like to kick it off. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. We're really excited to have you here and learn from your expertise. Our first question today, we're actually kind of rolling into a little bit of an intro on your position and what you do on a day-to-day basis. So we'd like to know, in addition to what you do and who you are, what does your daily work distribution look like? Does your daily work align with your background and what you want to be doing, or do you have something that you'd like to change in your position, or something you want to do more of? And to kick us off, I think I'm going to start with Paul. Oh, Paul, we cannot hear you, unfortunately. I might be a setting. I know Bevy kind of defaults to your computer settings sometimes. I think he's testing. Paul, we'll give you some time to test and pop along to our next panelist here. Jim, how about you? What does your work distribution look like? Does it align with what you want to be doing, or is there something you change?
Yeah, I think the great thing for me, I'm very fortunate. Been in the Tableau Alteryx space for over a decade and kind of been through the weeds, right? Been through the trenches, done a lot of development. Now I kind of get to help other people kind of as they go through that, working a lot on helping them solve their problems as they develop, helping them via code reviews. So I enjoy that because I think that's hopefully the progression that people can make as they go throughout their career in data, as they do enough work as an individual contributor. Hopefully they're able to help other people grow their own careers in the space.
I love that. Thank you. Kristen, what about you?
This is my first time here. So hi, everyone. So I'm the business intelligence supervisor. I've been in this role 3 years. Prior to that, I worked in DOC for 15. So a total of 18 years I've been with the Department of Corrections. My day-to-day is sort of similar. Tableau is just a small piece, but it is reviewing requirements, talking to the business, teaching my staff about how the business works, since that's where I came from. So how we operate, how projects get initiated, how validation works. And then now I'm able to work with my team to do that validation, troubleshoot issues, review code, work through any data errors, work with the business to get those corrected, things like that.
Is there anything you change that you want to do more of?
Oh, and a change. I think I would love to be able to have the time to learn the tools that my staff use. So I came in not having all of the background in history and education that they have. So I think if I had more time I could carve out, it would be learning how to use the tools.
I love that. That's awesome. I would join you in that in a heartbeat. Robert, how about you? Is there anything, what do you do in your day-to-day? Is there anything that you would change?
So after a big career change into academia last year, my work composition changed dramatically. So doing business intelligence for the last 15 years and Tableau for about the last 9, that was pretty full-time encompassing. Now I teach it, and still do consulting on the side. So I still get a good amount of working on it directly. Now I teach it to beginners. And I think so my work composition is more about helping groom the next generation of Tableau users. I like Tableau a lot better than that other software that businesses seem to like lately. And so I get a lot of satisfaction out of seeing them grow and what they build. Maybe in the spring event, we might see 1 or 2 of my students present their work that they create as their final projects, which are Tableau dashboards on something of their interest or a hobby or something like that. If I could change anything, it would be have a more advanced class in what I'm teaching to kind of take them to a higher level and fully fill out almost professional level Tableau acolytes. And sometimes I would love to hire some of them. But other than that, I mean, the composition and kind of mix of things I really like. I get to teach it, I get to start from beginners and mentor a lot of people, and I still get to do robust development for a client professionally. All good.
That's awesome. Yeah, and for those that have attended a lot of Madison Tug meetings, you might have seen Robert's student present on her Taylor Swift dashboard. That was so cool. So I'm really excited to see what your students create this year too. Paul, want to try again? Joel. Oh, hey, beautiful. Welcome, Paul. Technology, it really gets the best of us at all times, doesn't it?
So this plays right into my comment. As the owner of a family business, I spend more of my time than I would care on administrative tasks. And so that's kind of the downside. I do get excited by two things. When I do get the opportunity to engage with clients, especially with discovery and scope, that's really important to me. But then also, I'm really energized by our team and the exciting things that they do, and kind of going hand in hand with this. I mean, the idea of them teaching the old dog new tricks. I think that's one of the things that's kind of, that kind of keeps me going, and that's kind of what I really enjoy.
I love that, the enthusiasm coming
Yeah.
through. That's fantastic. Joel, what about you? What does your daily work life look like? Is there anything you'd change?
Yeah, first, hi everyone. This is my first time at one of these meetings. See some familiar faces. So I'm Joel Ashmore. I work at a company called Databricks. I'm based out of San Francisco, and my day-to-day mostly involves interacting with clients directly. And we have different clients. I'm mostly assigned to the retail industry, and my day-to-day is mostly figuring out what types of problems they have and then figuring out how to solve them. Those could be BI problems, data engineering problems, data science problems, or anything in between. One thing that I really wish I could see more of in industry in general is more matriculation so people can see what other organizations are doing, other people, and figuring out what best practices they can bring to light. One of the biggest things that I see in my work is people getting into silos and just doing things the way that things have always been done. And so it's great to have that sort of interaction, like a Madison Tug group, for instance, where they can get that sort of learnings from other people's efforts. So my day to day is mostly about trying to break down those barriers and getting people in touch with those best practices.
I love that. That's fantastic. And it's good to hear. That's exactly our hope for this panel, is that we can bring those perspectives together. And we will, just as a heads up for all the attendees, be continuing deeper dives into some of these questions and in this series through the 2026 Madison Tug schedule. So we're kicking it off today, but we're really excited to continue learning throughout 2026. All right, so we've got another question for you all. The question is, what is the future of data visualization, data analytics for you and the field? We're curious where you think we're going as a collective. And Paul, I'd be curious if you don't mind kicking us off. What do you see as kind of the next step for data in your company?
I think for us, that's a great question, because I think initially most of the projects we deal with, they focus on data acquisition. I mean, a lot of what we're dealing with is, different tools and systems to be able to accumulate data and process it more efficiently. And I think we've seen some of it, we've seen a transition towards, once they start acquiring this data, it's a matter of, okay, now how are we going to use that data, whether we're presenting it or analyzing it or whatever the case may be. The exciting thing right now is that mindset shift where now they're actually saying, okay, how are we going to utilize that, from a predictive analytics standpoint, using data models to be able to sit down and say, okay, we want to know, one of the buzzwords we hear a lot of is this idea of our clients want to make data-driven decisions. They want to run their business from a data perspective. And so, it's been exciting to see this chain come about as far as our ability to use some of these models and tools to be able to accelerate that.
Fantastic. That's great. Joel, what about you? What do you think is the future of data from your perspective?
So, from my perspective, and what I've kind of been seeing as trends is the hyper availability of tooling to the user. So, we're seeing, the boom of AI, the boom of cloud services becoming available, and with that, has this open sort of nature of things where you can use the best tool for the job. And so what I see is an ecosystem where people can go and grab what they need to use and then apply it to the data, which is also readily available. And so I'm seeing a lot of that in my own work. And yeah, I think that's more open tooling and getting more common standards for how to use these tools. That's the future.
Yeah, I think we've all been seeing that in different ways throughout our careers. So I think is a really smart insight. Kristen, Jim, Robert, anything to add to that question? Anything you want to make sure our attendees hear from your perspective?
I would add that because I work at a college now with a lot of different departments, the permeation of data into pretty much everything now. And we've had a lot of discussions about how nursing students need to take a technology class to get used to working with data and understanding it and being comfortable with it, because they're getting an onslaught of it in their side. We're seeing all other paths of education and whatnot dealing with data in ways that you might not expect. I have a friend who's a therapist, and they use AI to record their notes. It's no longer handwritten or necessarily typed in. It's transcribed and auto converted, and then you just sort of check it, and then you can pull themes out of it. So I think it's the main thing is just data itself is permeating everywhere in ways that are more user friendly. I think in the future of visualization, now there are so many tools. There's Tableau and 3 or 4 other major primary ones and about a dozen other ancillary ones. And then there's AI's lousy visualizations, in my opinion. I think more importantly is learning data visualization as a practice, the concepts, the visual principles, and then how you apply that and what tool you'll choose to learn. A tool's a tool. We love Tableau the most, but I think the practice of it as a broad area and domain is more important than level 10 experience in one specific tool. I think level 7 experience in 2 or 3 is the career path that I'm trying to give to my students.
That's great. Okay, next question. How can people interested in data careers bolster their resumes and their skill sets for data positions? Kristen, any thoughts on this?
Yeah. So again, you're already doing it. You're already here. I think that's like something is going to these events, taking trainings, doing things like that. I would say who's somebody who kind of like data. I went to school for social work. I didn't ever think I was here. I just started getting interested in asking to do data-related tasks initially assigned to me 15 years ago, responding to grants and being a part of different work groups that were data-related. And then I got better and self-taught. And I think from there just exploded. So I think that even if you start in a position that isn't directly data-related, you can take different steps to get into a data position. The other thing, I think when I am on a panel, and I'm a supervisor, right? So I look at resumes and see people. I think when they have work or projects outside of school and they've like taken it upon themselves to do extra work, right? Like that is something that's super easy that you can add to your resume. You are passionate about it and it's more than just a school project for you. Like this is something you want to do as a career.
Yeah, I think that's great. I actually also didn't start in data, so I am curious if other attendees have a weird background. I joke all the time. My background in terrorism and humanitarian aid is oddly applicable to the state sometimes, the micropolitics at play. So I would be curious if you've got a completely non-data background and you ended up in this field, what was your degree in? I think that's really interesting, the evolution of your journey through this path, and some great advice. Jim, what about you? What do you think people in data careers can do to bolster their resume or build their skill sets?
I think one big thing that is overlooked often is looking to get certifications now. A lot of certifications are cheap, if not free. I think particularly, not just in the Tableau space, but if you're looking to be a well-rounded analyst, right, whether it's the platforms themselves, whether it's more general, I think that getting your cert on some of those things, particularly if you're more junior, I think that adds a lot of credibility to a resume. And I think that the second piece, I think kind of like Kristen mentioned, not only is it just about getting it on the paper, but I think oftentimes people here, right, the C42 participants, networking is very important. And I think people don't usually think about that, but I think that will help open up certain doors. Not just on the paper itself, but opportunities that will help to get you experience to do some more things, in your career down the road.
Yeah, I think networking is really hard for me, and I often put it off because I don't want to do it. So I think that's a really good call out to make time and space for that in your life, because it's brought this beautiful panel of people together today, because we know you all, so I'm excited. I just need to make a deliberate effort to do that more myself for sure. Robert, yeah.
I want to ask a clarifying question for Paul and Jim and Kristen, since you guys recruit people and interview them. Do you guys find value in I don't want to call them pseudo certifications, but like LinkedIn learning badges and whatnot? Do you guys consider those valuable reflections of, to what Kristen said, interest outside of your kind of specific job or school, or are they not really that valuable in terms of what you've seen in terms of hiring people that have those?
Microcreds, maybe not so much. I think it shows something, right? But again, I think the question now is, you know, the level of effort it takes to get a microcred versus actually getting something from the vendor itself really isn't that significant. Yeah.
I think in a broader sense, one of the things the term we use a lot is a commitment to be a lifelong learner. I think that's vitally important, because for the most part, I mean, obviously we expect people to come in with a certain level of competencies, but there are things we're going to teach them of how we do things and our nomenclature and our workflows. And at the end of the day, we want them to be committed towards getting better, you know, and that's kind of because especially in today's landscape, your skill set today is going to need to be enhanced 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. So I think that's trying to figure out, you know, if they like to learn, you know, and if they're willing to continue to learn.
And I was just going to say, I don't specifically look at that if I'm looking at a resume, but if they talk about it, I think to Paul's point, if they're talking about their desire to learn more and what they've done, if they reference it on their own, then I'll definitely look down and see the things that they've done. But if I'm just reviewing a resume, that might not stand out to me.
And thanks, Jim. I forgot the term, the microcreds term. That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Joel, you have anything to add on this topic?
Yeah, so I do interviews probably every other week, probably not as much as other people on this panel, but certifications don't mean a lot. They indicate interest. What I like to see is project-based work, and not project-based work in the sense where people are demonstrating that they know a skill or that they can code in Python or something like that, and write a script, but project-based work in the sense that they can deliver something end to end, both the front and back end, sort of an all encapsulating data product. When I see that, that demonstrates a level of competency that you can't really assess on like a cold code signal interview or something like that. So that's one thing that I look for. And the other thing that I look for is that, yeah, willingness to learn, willingness to not just learn in your own field, but to explore other fields as well and get insight from that. So I'll give you an example. So if someone is a data engineer, trying to figure out what BI analysts do downstream, right? To see what their work is eventually going to feed into and helping to produce. That willingness to extend your sort of self is really, really helpful in being a great employee.
Excuse me, I'd like to add one thing. That's a great point about, because I think one of the things, we work with a wide variety of industries, and part of our challenge is learning what the business does and how they work. And so again, that goes hand in hand with like your point to the fact of being willing to learn even outside of your skill set, you know, not just coding or data, but basically being able to think about, okay, how does this business function and what makes them better? I really like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've got a question for you all from me directly. I'm curious, you know, I think soft skills are one of the hardest things to assess in an interview. And in searching for new candidacy, like, what do you all look for as kind of the flags that might indicate somebody has those soft skills, that willingness to, you know, continue learning, to, you know, look strategically down the road, to embrace alternative professions or perspectives in their work, because I struggle with that all the time personally.
I would like to jump in on that because I look for what is more of an indicator that they don't have it. And it's usually the first interview question I asked over many, many years, which I can recite, which is, tell me a little bit about yourself. You know, what do you do? Where are you from? What do you like to do? What gets you out of bed in the morning? And do you enjoy about your job? And I'm not asking about what I'm going to see is, are they going to regurgitate their resume at me, or did they hear the question and they can actually talk about themselves and be real and be a tiny, tiny bit personal and understand the as the kids say these days, the assignment, and actually answer like, I'm Robert, I grew up in California, blah, 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 blah. I like to do this, I do that. I got 2 kids. Like, there's some stuff about me. I'm a real human being. And you asked me to tell you about me, and I didn't puke my resume back on the table that you are holding on to and have probably already read. And I gotta say, when interviewing for technical roles, I'd say 75 or 80% of the time, it's puke the resume on the table. And that always worries me, because if there's an expectation they'll meet with customers, clients, other business folk, you need to have real conversations with those people, not talk about the root base of the weed of the technical details of the database schema with social workers, the agency I worked with for so long. So that's actually what I look for, is the absence of just a baseline foundational soft skill of conversation and relatability. Because I'm sure, as we all know, when you get into a real job environment with clients and customers and technical folks, it's more about how you relate to them individually and as a group than your knowledge of, like, how do I emote empathy into a meeting with professional business folk? Anyway, that's my take.
Yeah. Thanks, Robert. Just a reminder to the audience, I put a note in chat, but let us know your questions. The panel is here for you all. We do have another question for you all on the list. What do you feel is the role AI plays in your current position? I know there's, if any, I know there's been a lot of talk around this topic, and there's honestly some fear around what AI is going to take on or not take on for data careers. So are you worried about the impact of AI and position availability in the future? Joel, maybe let's start with you.
Yeah, I see this traveling through my profession at a breakneck pace. So is it scary? Yes, because change is scary. But is it a negative thing? And I don't have an answer on that yet. What I see is that there's this trend, sort of like the hyper availability of tooling being a thing. We're also seeing that there is a shift for data employees beyond themselves being the producers of the data product to them being supervisors or overseers. So what I mean by that is you have uh, other things, other systems that are doing the actual work. We have systems now that can create data visualizations for you with one click or one sentence in natural language, right? And so now you are in the place of having to judge whether this is like AI slop, whether it has value, or what do you want to do with that? And so with that comes more of an importance on judgment, more of an importance on being detail oriented. So you are evaluating whether what you're producing is valuable. And to the point that was just made, more of an emphasis on soft skills for how do you communicate what you just made to your stakeholders. So
Yeah.
that's what I see. And for me, AI is like, it's ever present. It was involved in performance reviews. We have AI tools that go and look at your Google Calendar and see like who you met with, and they develop all these bullet points for you. And then you have to go, oh, I actually did this? Did I do this? No, I actually didn't do that. That was someone else. And
Yeah.
and so you're put in this position of like having to be an overseer of other non-sentient or presumably non-sentient tooling.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I had not even considered the use of AI for performance evals, so that has unlocked a new level of fear for me. I appreciate that. Jim, what about you? With all your clients and the different projects you work on, what's the role AI plays in your life? Are you worried?
I think it's similar to the advent of Google. I think those who know how to use it well will have a pretty big advantage. Those who don't, I think will struggle. I think you're going to see this probably more on the data engineering side, maybe than on the data visualization side. Because again, I think that the challenge on the data visualization side is that you do need that business context to be able to build something that's valuable to deploy versus, I think we kind of talked a lot earlier about a big challenge is data acquisition. But then once you acquire that data, then the challenge is shaping that. And I think when you look at large systems, you look at ERPs, the challenge is often in understanding how those tables are joined together, how they're related to each other. So I think AI does a really good job at helping to understand that on the data engineering side.
Excellent. Kristen, what about you? I know the state kind of has this perception of always being 20 plus years behind. I'm curious what you think the role of AI is in your sector.
Yeah, I mean, if the one end is, super fast, we are at a snail's pace working for the state. We are slow, which is a little scary to be maybe really behind a ball that's moving really, really fast. I will say that I think I understand why they're being so cautious about it, in the sense that since we work for the state of Wisconsin, we work for and work everybody who lives here, right? So the data that we work with is public and sensitive, and a huge impact in just the realm of providing data to people and what it could do if used incorrectly. So I totally respect that, and I feel like I have somebody on my team dedicated to work on AI, which I think is really cool and really ahead of the game. So as soon as I kind of get a green light, I can kind of let them work a pace that is a little more controlled, and it's really exciting. So as scared and nervous, I'm also excited for what we can do. I think also working for the state, we don't have a lot of money. And so it's how can we use tools that we already have? How can we share resources? How can we share best practices and things like that? Will that make the things that we develop either in-house or who we contract with, we can just work together on vendors that we find are really helpful, tools that we can use. If something is approved to use, how can other agencies use it? Again, in the state of Wisconsin, we have to have every AI tool approved. So I don't know how long that will last, if that will be forever. But that's why I don't see it ever, or a long time being used in performance reviews in that sense, because then it could be used so widely. So I think it'll be slow, but hopefully once that door is open, it can be open in a safe and protected way.
I love that. All right. Robert, Paul, anything to add? Otherwise, I've got a question from the audience for you.
I think the one exciting thing about it for us is we've seen, in some automation projects, the speed at which it's iterating is amazing. I mean, that's some of these models and what they're doing today that they didn't do 6 months ago is truly amazing.
Yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts on AI, given that I exist in two worlds. On the academia side, we are all terrified of AI and students just basically offloading their schoolwork. And the perspective that I espouse is that plagiarism is not about copying another human, but rather representing work that's not yours as yours. And that's kind of something that the school is taking on. So in terms of writing papers and essays and whatever, I look out for it. I use AI a lot. I use it on both sides of the house. I also teach my students how to actively use it and try to do it ethically. In terms of professional use for AI in the data sphere, I've found AI is not particularly great at precise things. Like I've asked it some statistical questions related to one of my classes, and it gives me the wrong answer. And if I change one word from equals to exactly equals, I get a different answer. Those worry me with data related things. I find that if you give it data sets, it gives you relatively generic visualizations. I know there's a lot of talk on the ether about, oh my God, viz jobs are going to be gone. I'm not scared. What I think is a really fascinating use of AI that applies more broadly is in the data analysis, business analysis side of the house, understanding requirements and whatnot. These are all large language models. A very good friend of mine who's an AI specialist, she told me about how she had a dozen meetings with a dozen different stakeholders, interviewing them about their business requirements and whatnot, recorded it with their permission, uploaded it, had it transcribe it basically, and then asked it to pull themes out of the conversation. And good business analysts, that's what we're supposed to do, is pull out those themes of requirements in broad sort of categorical ways. But it came up with a few that were really subtle and transcended and crossed different interviews and different people, but identified them. And I thought that is something that AI could be really, really good at, because it's about language. It's about sussing out not necessarily deep meaning, but nuanced connection of words there. And I thought that was a really incredible use case that I've tried to use in a few ways. In terms of like devising a database schema, sure. I think it's much more useful in saving people's time in writing and other things that people find to be onerous tasks. I do think that we're going to become more proofreaders of AI generated content. That's kind of my fear and my hope, because I don't love to write, but that's where I think a lot of things are headed with AI.
Yeah. I think that's really important to kind of draw that line too between, the more human side that we might be able to leverage it for versus our actual data tasks that we might have on our plate. Okay, I have a couple of questions now in chat for you all. So I'm going to let you all decide who answers what. The first question comes from Andrew. He asks, what recommendations do you have for folks who are lifelong learners and committed to their craft, but also highly value their work-life balance and aren't necessarily interested in pouring time into Tableau projects during their off hours or during their free time?
I'd like to answer that because I did in the chat a little bit. First off, I would say get a job where they want to let you roam freely and teach yourself stuff while you're on the clock, because OJT is the best type of learning. Paid learning is the best learning. At the same time, as somebody who just took on a huge career change to get used to that and started an MBA, which I'm going to finish in a few months, there's an aspect of, sort of the self-immolation of time. Like my free time disappeared last fall in a lot of ways. And yet I view it as a huge investment just to get another master's degree kind of for funsies, for my resume, for my career, whatever. Your free time is absolutely yours to do with. If you can reframe it to be it's an investment in yourself, you're not giving up work-life balance, you're investing in your life. Work is over there. That's my thought.
Yeah. Anyone else have thoughts? I will say I struggle with my work-life balance. I have a problem with the word no, and I have been working on trying to resolve that recently. Jim?
And I think that there's like diminishing returns on doing that. If you've got, a Tableau public page, if you've got some kind of thing out there, going above and beyond and all of a sudden taking that into, you've built out 50 different dashboards that you want to show, right? I think like there's diminishing returns that you want to understand, like on the Pareto scale, like what's the right amount of time to put in versus like at what point do they really turn to diminishing returns?
Yeah. Okay. We've got another question. With AI becoming more embedded in business intelligence tools, what do you think the evolving role of analytics and developers will be within the Tableau ecosystem? Will AI shift us more towards data engineering, storytelling, or something else?
I think that'll go more towards data engineering than storytelling. I think the storytelling piece, one thing that we always joke about is that AI can't take our jobs because business users can't really explain what they want. And I think, like there's still a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
So I think the storytelling piece, again, these tools can create simple bar charts, line charts. That's great, but to actually tell the story and craft that is something it's a partnership between you and your customer. So I think AI is really going to help save a lot of time on probably the ingestion, the preparation. You look at particularly around like API development, those things. But I don't think it's going to take away the human side of things as much.
I find that comforting. Thank you. Anybody else have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'd agree with that for the most part. I'm not sure that data engineering is where the focus is going to shift, but I do think that it's more of a performance enhancer than it is a replacement for something that we do. I think back to soft skills, that's ever going to be super important. Even if we had, much more powerful AI tools, that's still going to be important, I would say. So I think in that sense, like our roles as people who are creating these data products for our stakeholders are pretty secure in that sense.
Yeah.
I see there's been a move, online, I see it in the ether towards, it's going to do more data engineering. And as a task, it has a pretty decent idea. Let's move data from here to there. As someone who dabbled in ETL stuff, one of the things you have to figure out is exactly how you want to transform things as you go. I don't think AI is going to be fantastic at that. To Jim's point, we're all laughing about that, Jim. It's even in the chat. That was a great quote.
You won the quote of the meeting. It's been decided and voted.
But ultimately, if you have AI build you, a data pipeline, the problem is nobody understands how it works, and you've lost kind of the maintainability of it. And what do you do then? You have to use AI to fix AI's work, and then it's just a cesspool of black boxes that you don't understand. And I think we all know that's a long-term problem. I think AI is going to change what we consider now to be entry level, and this is what I tell my students: entry level maybe has been here. AI can do entry level work. It can do basic bar charts, to Joel's point. It can do basic pie charts. It's going to give you something that's reasonably understood. And if you just need level 1 stuff, level 2 stuff, great, throw in AI. I think the baseline for entry level is going to shift up. You're going to have higher skills, stronger skills, more well-rounded skills to come in at an entry level job than just knowing a tool and maybe how to run a business meeting. Basically, you're going to have to a little more rounded. But I don't think it's going to take away everybody's job. It's just going to shift things. And I think we'll have a little backlash in another year from AI. stuff being broken. I see it online as well.
Well, we're getting to the point where we're actually able to observe long-term impacts too, which will be an interesting shift in the conversation. All right, we had one last question come in. We're going to lightning round this because we've got about 3 minutes left on your all's time today. Is there value in being well-rounded to y'all as those who hire people? Or do you prefer to hire the most dedicated and hardest worker? Do you feel like one can be very dedicated if they don't spend their evenings doing professional development activities? Well-rounded or dedicated and hardest worker?
I don't think it's an or.
It's an and. Okay.
Yeah,
Kristen?
I don't think they're two separate things. I don't think you can get hardest working from an interview, right? I think you can get more well-rounded from an interview because you can see what they can do. But I think, as we said earlier, can they talk about their work, their life? Can they talk about how they work and what they've done? Can they articulate different projects? If you can do that effectively, efficiently, that's what I look for in an interview. So it might not be the most technical person with the best experience. It really is, and I know people don't like to say it, but it's really fit on what they bring to the team, their background, and how we think that they're going to, like, what space am I trying to hire for? And often the most dedicated person, I don't know what that truly means. It's not somebody who spends all of their weekends night building dashboards. That's probably not what I need. So again, I think that's just part of showing. Again, when I say that only because, like, when I see people right out of school who want to have a job, that's great. Their project is wonderful. I think that's one thing that they can talk about. But if they can talk about at least one other thing, then I know it's something that they're really passionate about doing. Even if it's a side project or they helped a professor do something, those things are small things that I think can go a long way.
Yeah. Any other last thoughts for us in our last minute?
I would really echo the piece about fix. I think one of the things we've trended towards, especially for junior level positions, is shorter engagements. Going and saying, okay, we're going to start this. Maybe it's a 1 month probationary, 2 month probationary, to see what that fit is like and see how they, what do they bring to the team and how do they fit, for both sides, for them and for us as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I would second that completely with some of the hires we've had on our team too. All right. I am so incredibly grateful to each and every one of you for all of your time today. I truly mean that. I think I learned a lot, and I'm really grateful for your expertise and helping us kick off this new journey into roles and careers in data for our Tableau user group in 2026. Big thank you to all of you. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks all. So next up on our agenda today is talking about our Tableau tip. I apologize. I don't know why it's not loading. There we go. Okay. Today, we're very lucky. Robert Salas has given us a lot of time on the panel, but we also get to hear from him about enclosed dot plots. And I will turn it over to you, Robert. Your floor.
Thanks, Olivia. So an enclosed dot plot, as you can see on the screen, this is what I'm going to build really quickly and show you guys how to, is basically a dot plot. So you get to see every single data point, but then you wrap it. You wrap it in basically a bar, or a, this is also called a Peapod chart. Jen and I were talking about the other day. And so you can see pretty easily and clearly the dispersion of the data. And statistics, right? The dispersion of the data is how broadly it spans from its low to high values and where things fall along the way and how the data is dispersed. It's pretty much in the name. And so a normal dot plot shows you that, but it can sometimes be hard to see the lows and the highs and kind of how broadly it spreads. Enclosing it gives you some of the advantages of a bar chart. So we can see in this example on the screen, the two bottom ones have the widest range because they have basically a bar enclosing them fully. So you can see the data is really widely dispersed. And you might miss that because that one lone yellow dot on the right-hand side that's near the upper end might be hard to spot to kind of relate to the others. And so, when you look at this, you can draw some immediate conclusions around how tightly the data is nestled around the red dots in basketball there, how broadly and widely it's spread out over golf. You've got some, people who make these. This, by the way, is the 50 highest paid athletes from 3 years ago, I think. So all these people are already making scads of money, but you can see there are two huge outliers on the far right, and that the spread and dispersion of the data there is just much, much larger than the other sports. The enclosure helps your eyes to compare those range of values, right? You can easily compare length. One of the visual Gestalt principles of cognition is enclosure and length. And you can see that those two are much wider and longer than the others. So it's a pretty easy to create and also very powerful visualization when you want to have granular data and see all the dots that you can interrogate with really super cool tooltips using Jen's other techniques, but also to be able to very easily make comparative insights with the length and width of the enclosed space. So I'm going to show you guys how to build an enclosed dot plot or peapod chart. Very simple. So what I have here is just a starter Tableau workbook. Again, this data is the 50 highest paid professional athletes from a few years ago. Steps, very, very simple. I like to start with measures because I like to place them where I want them to be. So I'm going to take a measure. I'm going to put that on columns. Great, I get a bar chart, bam. I'm going to place a dimension on rows, which is how I want to differentiate and break apart my measure. And in this case, I'm going to use sport. So now I have a basic run-of-the-mill bar chart. Ha! AI would create this for me. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to change the mark type to circles. And when I do that, it's now aggregating all of the data together and it's effectively giving me just the sum. But I want to see all the individual data points. So what we do there is we bring a dimension object onto the detail tab to disaggregate that measure. And now I get all the dots. And so I have now all 50 athletes of these top 50 paid athletes. Just for funsies, because I like to differentiate things visually, I'm going to give each sport a different color so we can see them apart. And great, again, you can look at this and draw some conclusions and get some insights into this, looking at each individual data point. These two over here on the far right are really big. And it's, to me at least, visually difficult to make comparisons between them. Now you can stop here. You've got a dot plot, great. To turn this into an enclosed dot plot, we need to create something that encloses it. And ironically, the thing that encloses it is a line. So we're going to now make this into a dual axis chart. I'm going to hold down the control key, which is a little shortcut to duplicate a pill. So I held down control and I dragged my pill on the column shelf right next to it. And now I have two charts. I'm going to turn this into a dual axis chart by right-clicking the right pill. Boom, dual axis. I'm going to make sure that I synchronize the axes so that they, line up with each other. And I'm going to make another adjustment later that I want to happen on both. When you create a dual axis chart, you get a second marks card. So we can see over here in the marks card area, I have 1 and 2. The bottom one, I'm going to change to a line. And nothing really happens here yet because I've not given it something to draw my line with. I'm going to move the element that defines my grain onto path. So I'm going to move name to path. And now I get a line that goes between and across and through every single data point from end to end. Now I don't really need the color here for my line. I want my enclosure to be different. So I'm going to take the color off of that. Great. What I have up here at the top is also colloquially known as a barbell chart, right? Just imagine a little weightlifter, you've got a barbell chart. So a little bonus here in how to build a barbell chart. What I'm going to do now is kind of configure the enclosure part of it. I'm going to send the gray line to the back so that it's not sort of hanging out in front of the colors. And you can right-click your axis there, and there's something here called Move Marks to the Back. And all it did there was reverse the order of the marks card and the pills. There's 3 different ways to do this, but I find that one of the easiest, right-clicking the axis. What I'm going to do now is configure my line. I'm going to make it larger to enclose my dots. Just crank up the size, and then I'm going to play around with the color. You can choose something weird depending on what your visual aesthetic effect is that you want. Given that we're sharing screens, I'll leave it kind of this medium gray. Great, enclosed dot plot. You could stop here. The task is complete. But we're going to pretty up because we're Tableau people. I'm going to get rid of my extra header up here because I don't need it. I'm going to edit my axis here because one of the things that's sometimes useful is not to include 0. And so when I do that, it's just going to reorient my axes slightly. Nothing really happened there, but it's sometimes can be handy. And then because I have overlapping marks, overlapping dots, I'm going to configure those so that I can see through them very slightly. I'm going to dial my opacity down to about 80%. You can just barely see that they overlap. It's quite common to also maybe put a border around them so that they visually offset a little bit better. You can see here I added a lighter color, so I have an outline, or I can use a darker color, so I get a border. And that's just kind of user's choice, right? I personally think the darker border here is more effective in seeing the overlapping dots. So I'm going to stick with that. That's about it. That's building an enclosed dot plot. Now you can do a couple other things if you wanted to change the colors of things or whatever. But one of the things that's cool about this is that it also works with custom shapes. And so I've already preloaded this. I just want to show you the punchline in the interest of time. But if you have custom shapes, as I do for these sports, auto racing, baseball, basketball, boxing, football, golf, and soccer, you can actually just change your circles to be a shape, bring your sport dimension or whatever your dimension is in your data onto the shapes icon, and assign custom shapes. And so now I have, excuse me, this enclosed dot plot that not only conveys to me the amounts that each athlete gets paid on the field, also conveys the dispersion and breadth of the data, the range from low to high, but also visually conveys the sport itself. I don't really need to go look over here to the word football because I see a football. It's hard to tell these are boxing gloves. And then finally, one of the last things that I did here was I turned on the labels so that I could see the low and the high values for each of the lines. And I just turned on the maximum values for them. So you can see I turned on min max for label for each cell, and it's giving me the low and the high values across that sport range. So auto racing, in terms of the highest 50 paid athletes, they two that are in there make from $57 to $76 million, and so on and so forth. So a couple different fun ways to play with the enclosed dot plot, but again, just kind of primarily remembering that it allows you to make comparisons visually in terms of the width of the line, how far it stretches, helps you to understand the full dispersion between the min and max values. And it also allows you to see the clusters of individual data points themselves and interrogate them through a hover help or tooltip. I'll pause there to see if there are any questions. Olivia, if there are any questions, you could read into me.
Yep.
I'll demonstrate.
We did have a question from Victor. Who are the two outliers? We're curious.
Cristiano Ronaldo for soccer and John Rahm for golf. 200 million there.
I don't follow golf, but Cristiano makes sense. So
yeah, I mean, and I don't follow any of the sports, but I think some of these, there's Messi. I know a few of them. So, but yeah,
see,
Ronaldo.
I'm surprised Messi's so far down, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. We didn't have any other questions that I'm seeing, Robert, so I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much. That was a great tip. All right. Let's go ahead and get back to our wrap up today. All right, so first and foremost, a reminder to everybody, Tableau and Salesforce have created a Tableau community on Slack. This is an incredible opportunity to network with people all around the globe. It's got everyone from newbies to advanced data experts, and they're coming together to share their knowledge and chart a course for career success, sort of supporting our panel topic from earlier today. If you scan that QR code on the slide today, you will be able to get signed up for the Tableau community. It's a really great opportunity to network and learn in an informal way with so many of our other data brethren in the Tableau family. So just a reminder, please sign up for that if you haven't already. This is a great place to get help, advice, etc. And Jen has put the link into chat as well. Next up, a couple of upcoming events that we want to talk about. First and foremost, if you haven't and you are interested, we do have a Madison Tug Adventure Club and volunteering group. You can sign up by using that QR code in the bottom part of the slide here. We will not contact you through the general bevy channels. If you do not sign up via that QR code, you are not going to get notified about the Tug events and the volunteering events. So make sure to sign up for that if you are interested. There's no obligation to participate. Signing up via that QR code just simply means you get the notices when we do schedule something. I'm going to be planning an adventure club for January. Adventure club members and or new members, if you prefer inside or outside events, I don't know how many people like the cold like I do. Let me know. I'm going to have an announcement to the adventure club soon about what that January event will be. Jen has an incredible opportunity for some more volunteering on February 28th. We'll be sharing those details out shortly as well. The Wisconsin Tugs next meeting is going to be January 20th. The other Tugs are still working out their 2026 dates, so we don't have those yet, but we will be be having a Q1 event from Madison Tug as well. And in case you're interested, there is a Winter Analytics Summit coming up from February 20th to 22nd. Our very own leadership team member, Jeff Kritzman, will be presenting at this event. And we wanted to remind you all that that was upcoming, but also let you know that if you are interested in attending, the early bird pricing deadline is the 15th of this month. So if you want to get in at a lower price, sign up sooner rather than later.
Olivia, just one last upcoming event.
Oh,
Just you want to give a reminder about the event tonight?
Oh, yeah. A reminder, you all, holiday parties tonight, 5:30, Delta Beer Lab. We are going to have lots of fun things to do. We've got crafts, we have games, we have presents. We will be doing our white elephant. We will be providing food and snacks and delicious desserts. So we would love to see you there if you're in the Madison area, or if not and you're willing to travel, we'd love to see you too. Thanks, Robert. All right, swag giveaway. Jen has the wheel of fun. She's going to spin and give us a couple of winners today. Jen, are you ready to take it over?
Yes. Sorry, it wouldn't let me both share the screen and unmute at the same time.
Of course. Well, why would they make it easy on you? All right. Thank you, Jen.
So I have loaded in all the names from everybody who checked in today. Let's give it a spin. Whee! I just love this thing. Oh,
I got to be honest, it's extremely satisfying.
It's sure, you probably can't even hear the clicking, which is happening. Jimmy won! Winner, winner!
Jimmy, that's amazing. Congratulations. If you don't mind, please direct message me your email address and we'll make sure you get that gift card.
All right, taking Jimmy out of the drawing and spin it again. Whee! I should have shared this.
This is the only good use of a pie chart, by the way.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Leslie Lay, our second winner.
Woohoo! Congratulations, Leslie. Same to you, Leslie. Please DM me before you leave the meeting so I make sure I have your email for that gift card. All right, beautiful. We are so excited to be, I just want to say at the end of the year, your leadership team is so excited to be a part of this Madison Tableau user group. We love you all so much. It has brought us so much joy throughout the last year to bring you content and have your interaction and engaging questions. We learned so much from you as well throughout this process, and it really is rewarding to get to be a part of that. So I just want to thank you all for attending our last meeting of 2025. And if we don't see you tonight at the holiday party, we wish you the best in 2026 and throughout your holiday season. Thank you again for everything you do to support us and this group. We are incredibly grateful to you all. So with that, I do need emails still from Jimmy and Leslie. Make sure that you get those to us so that you can get your gift cards. And thank you again from the bottom of our hearts. From the leadership team to you all, happy holidays. Thanks all. Bye.